not suppose in her that Theodore and his ex-wife were not exes, and the OS was marketed as an emotional companion. So she was able to use the AI for the emotional side, and therefore didn't feel like her needs weren't being, Theodore was able to meet the rest of her needs, but the AI was able to meet needs that Theodore couldn't meet.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Is that okay? Like, is there something wrong with that?
I think
would that be cheating?
It actually gets into a really interesting question of and friendship, because I think in our society we have really uplifted the idea of like someone not just completing you, which I think we're starting to unwork and unwind a little bit, that like, you complete me, you're my other half. And it's like, no, I'm whole on my own. Do we help and assist and support each other? We hold up this idea of someone else being your everything. My partner is my best friend. They're my intellectual sparring partner. They're my muse. They're my partner in crime. They're my favorite comedian. And it's like, okay, hang on. I don't have a single friend that is, and your partner is like your lover too, right? They're the person you find the most attractive and turns you on more than anyone else. Even removing that aspect of it, I'm like, I don't have a single friend that is someone that like we have the same humor, intellectually we're aligned, they perfectly get me, they serve all of these things that you want other people to support in your life. And we have this idea that our partner needs to check like all of these boxes. And that to me is just unreasonable. And I think that's why friendships and healthy friendships are so important for the health of relationships, because your partner may be your lover, right? And also your intellectual equal, and you have really great philosophical conversations, but they're just not that funny. That's okay. Not everyone's a comedian, but you have a friend or two that really get your humor. And it's like, to me, that's not cheating, but you are getting this emotional thing from these other relationships. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that actually makes you more available to be in your relationship, right? And I think the way that we've established relationships as a society are to be romantic, that like they are your physical partner. And like if you choose to have or raise kids, you're co-parent, right? That's also the other aspect of most relationships. But then of course, those things are being parsed out too. We see divorced couples co-parent extremely successfully, even though they're no longer in partnerships. And like I mentioned, polyamorous couples that get their physical needs met elsewhere, open relationships that aren't even polyamorous. I guess polyamory is more about multiplying the emotional needs across different people as well as the physical needs, but open relationships that are like, I don't have any emotional needs from anyone else, but I'm getting these physical needs from other people. It just has to come down for I guess, a cop-out answer. It's like, well, it depends on your definition of cheating, which is a cop-out. But I think in any partnership, however you define that partnership, it really is about the clear communication of the expectations of the two people in that relationship. For me, if I were to ever get married, I think I have pretty high standards for that. But there are things that I'd be willing to sacrifice. Like, would it be awesome if my partner was really, really funny? Yes. Do I need to be able to have fun with my partner? Absolutely. Do they need to be the funniest person I know? No. But we need to align in some of these other ways that's like more important to me than them being my favorite comedian. And therefore, like, finding that in other avenues, I'm like, that wouldn't be cheating. But in the context of my relationship, if there are emotional needs that we've decided we're getting from each other, and then you start getting those needs from anywhere outside of the relationship, even if it's an online friend. I've heard a bunch of stories about people getting video game wives, that it's like you start talking with like someone that you're video gaming with across the world, and there's an emotional affair that happens through that, right?
Well, and I mean, even think work wives, right? That's a term that's thrown out. I mean, what percentage of affairs are work wife, sort of from work?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
If there's an affair, I mean, I don't know the number, but it has to be more than half. Like,
Oh, yeah.
just I would say it's probably, if I had to guess, 80 to 85% of
Oh, yeah.
of
But
of affairs
I think
are because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to, is there an expectation of what you come to me for that now you're going to someone or something else for? That feels like cheating the boundaries of our relationship. Is there something that we are supposed to serve each other that you're now looking to someone else for without discussing with me and redefining the boundaries of this agreement? Like, even this is maybe a weird example, but like, if I recorded a podcast episode with someone else and put it out on the Bow Down podcast channel and didn't tell you, that would feel wrong and bad, because it's like, it's a violation of our agreement, even though maybe we haven't explicitly said, like,
we haven't signed papers that are like, hey, this is,
right.
No, I get it. No,
But it would be a violation of what we have kind of agreed to. And I think there's something similar there. And it's just higher stakes when it's someone that you're building a life with, right?
I agree. I think it's an interesting question, because and I think about like online dating now, or because a lot of people have relationships with people, long distance relationships. They met online, and it could be a year. And I mean, there's catfishing and all this other stuff that occurs.
Oh yeah.
But in some senses, in a relationship where where your primary vehicle of communication is, let's say, through text, and you're not talking very much, or even if you are, because AI is getting so good now, like AI can talk, and you might not know what was if not today, in 6 months, it'll be to the point where you don't know it's an AI, perhaps. But because I've seen some fakes that are pretty incredible already, and we're just at the tip of the iceberg of it. But really, I mean, is one of these, a long distance relationship, which is via text, where you're not really, you're talking a lot, like you're texting all night long, and it's this. I remember hearing of a case where it was basically an elderly gentleman, and he had an online relationship with this much younger woman, and I'll put that in quotes because it's not at all clear to me and anybody else listening. Like they had this relationship for 5 years at least, and he would periodically send his online girlfriend, money.
Yeah.
And not, I mean, nothing more than, I don't think it was like making him broke or anything like that.
Right.
But there were a lot of hints that this probably was a catfish example. The person because he was an elderly guy, he was in like assisted, like a rehab or an assisted living facility for veterans.
Sure.
Like he wasn't, and his family was like, yeah, this is totally fake, and something happened where it really seemed like it was fake. But the scam, the alleged scammer was able to convince him again that no. But my question, and people are like, that's so terrible. But here's the question, like, on some level, he has to know, based on the evidence that is accrued, that there's a good chance that this relationship is fake. Okay, like on some level. Now, consciously, he may not be willing to accept that. But here's my question: even if we know it's fake, does that matter? Because what is he getting out of he's getting something out of this relationship. Is he being scammed for real? Same thing. And could that be, this relationship could be truly AI, right? I mean, now we're in a world where literally every response could be generated by ChatGPT. Like, if we're just doing text, I mean, and presumably you could do voice to, text to voice, so you could even have phone calls with ChatGPT at some point. Where is there harm? And is the harm different if this were AI instead of a scammer? Does it? I don't know. These are just things that keep me up at night.
I do think the harm is different if it's a scammer or if it's AI, because I think with AI, at least in the inception, if someone is actively choosing to, like, I know that this is AI and I'm like entering into some sort of emotional arrangement, it's like, well, then there's a conscious choice to know it's with an AI, you know? But whether, even if a scammer is using AI to generate messages, if there's a scammer who's like obviously trying to get money out of someone, whether they use AI or not, to me, that original intent is still harmful. But I do think there is a question of, it's almost like the red pill, blue pill matrix thing, right? And this was something, I think we talked about it after we stopped recording last week, but if we are living in a matrix, do you want to know and see the reality of the world, or would you like to just stay in the matrix? Both of us, I think, correct me if my memory is wrong, but we're like, I just could never consider a world where I wouldn't want to know the truth. Like, there's just something about my constitution that I'm like, I don't care if it brings me so much more pain. The idea that I could be living a lie, I'm like, the entire crux of my work and all of the questions that I ask and everything I research and all of the work that I produce is about pursuing truth and living in alignment with it. Like, I just couldn't, for me, I'm like, I don't get it. But I also understand that other people are built differently than that and feel differently. And you mentioned having someone in your life who was like, yeah, if I'm really happy, it's okay if it's not totally true. One of my English teachers one time was asking us, you know, if our partner was cheating on us, like actually cheating on us, but we were perfectly happy in every way. The only thing is they're stepping out of the marriage and we just didn't know. Would you want to know, even though you know it's going to make you unhappy? Even though you know that fundamentally it's going to make you unhappy, you're going to go through pain, you're going to go through hurt, and if you didn't know, you would never know, you would never feel the pain of it, and you would never sense anything different in your marriage. I still think most people are like, no, I would want to know the truth, even though I know that that's going to cause me pain. But maybe there's some people out there that are like, no, if I'm happy and I don't sense, and I think 9 times out of 10 with cheating, you can usually sense something's wrong, there's been a shift in my partner, they're pulling away, blah, 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 blah. But if none of those signs were there, I think it comes down to that question of like, do you want to know the truth, even if the truth is more painful? And maybe it's just easier to say this hypothetically. I just can't imagine not wanting to know the truth, but I do think that there are people out there that would be better with the other one. And I think that's your choice that you get to make. If this old man, even if for me, it sounds like he's getting taken advantage of and it's sad that it's a lie, I'm like, he gets to choose to be blind to it if he wants to, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. And actually, someone's getting is kind of like an emotional escort, right? Like someone's getting paid.
No, exactly right. He's getting something out of it. I mean, and it's not like this person is and again, I don't know the circumstance, it was just an interesting example of it, but this person is doing work.
Yeah.
To get this money. Whatever the case is, the person is doing work to continue the illusion, if it is in fact an illusion, of the relationship. Like, that's no different than I like the way you put it, an emotional escort.